As seen on Kaleidoscope the Series. Kaleidoscope the Series on ABC 23. It's a different look at our region, unique places you may not know exist, unique people sharing their amazing talents. There are good things happening in our area. Watch it all every Sunday on Kaleidoscope the Series on ABC 23. Now, taking you back up into northern Pennsylvania, into Ridgway's Lily of the Valley National Historic Register District. Get this, there are over 700 properties on this tour that were built between 1855 and 1917. Many of them were owned by millionaires in the lumber, tannery, and various manufacturing industries. One such home, owned by Oscar Grant, has been restored to its former glory, and we were given an exclusive look inside.
Well, Oscar B. Grant, who came to Ridgway from Liberty, Sullivan County, New York in 1867 to develop a tannery. Tanneries, of course, at that time were quite large everywhere that had any hemlock trees to speak of. So when they found out that there was this significant forest on what we call the Allegheny Plateau, here they decided to come down, take a look at the area, and that in turn was the reason that Mr. Grant and Charles Horton developed what became known as the Grant and Horton Tannery, which in most people's minds was called the Ridgway Tannery. The tannery was one of two in Ridgway, the other being the Eagle Valley Tannery on North Broad Street. So Ridgway was noted, as this area was, for having a lot of tanneries because, again, it goes back to the availability of the natural resource that you needed for creating tannic acid to tan leather.
I was looking for an old home that might be on the National Registry, and I had seen a few things come up, and we had looked at a few, and the condition was really a lot to be desired, and I wasn't happy with any of those. I stumbled across the O.B. Grant house in my search. I'd never been to Ridgway before, and I contacted the realtor. I made an appointment with her, and I came up and I stayed at the Victorian Towers. Nice introduction to the town of Ridgway. And the next morning I was meeting Kathy. To my surprise, it was very nice and it was in good condition, and I contacted my wife. I said, we're going to do this, and I decided at that point to buy the home. We started working with the house and doing what we wanted to do, staging the rooms, setting up the rooms, how it might have been at the time of O.B. Grant's life here. In Montgomery County is where we did a lot of the search because that's our home base, and we would always be on the lookout. But wherever we were, I found pieces in Florida. So we would find wherever we were always looking. We need this, or we want that, or it would work well in this home.
Well, what sets it apart is the fact, from a purely physical point of view, it's not actually located in Ridgway Borough. It's located in Ridgway Township. So everything that we classify as the Millionaire's Row is actually within Ridgway Borough proper. This house, as gorgeous as it is, and having been restored by Larry and Diane Haney, is just about 200 feet outside of the borough limit of Ridgway. Some of the very wealthy people that made money in the lumber industry transitioned into coal, oil and gas, and other avenues of manufacturing and extractive industries, which created the wealth that they in turn took into their homes, indicating their position in the society, the social structure of Ridgway at the time. Ridgway, between 1890 and 1910, was the richest per capita community in the state of Pennsylvania. Now again, you're playing with statistics, but there were 18 millionaires in this town at that time, with a population that reached its peak. Right after 1910, about 6,700 people was the highest population ever in town. But those homes up on Millionaire's Row, again, were indicative of how much of an economic engine this community was at one time, particularly after 1864, when the first of the railroads came through Ridgway. Those days was the Philadelphia and Erie, which in turn was actually known as the Pennsylvania Railroad. Typical of these Victorian homes, which were quite large, they had many get-togethers. Several of the homes up in the Millionaire's Row area have ballrooms in them where they would actually have cotillions, which was a big thing in the Victorian era days. The families back in the older days, why the homes were so large, is they very often had many more children than what we do now in 2019. I think the average in the United States now is like 2.5.
I think having an old home and maintaining it into the future, there's a lot that is being demolished. There's a lot of homes that are getting torn down. This house was at one time, I think, being looked at as that they might have taken it down, but then it got saved, and here it is now. So I think it's very important because there's a lot of people who don't want to put the time or the effort or the money into redoing these homes here.
Back in 2002, we started doing the extensive paperwork to get a National Register district, it is called. And what you go through is a process of inventorying all the various buildings within a given geographic area. In this case, it is Ridgway Borough. At the end of that, it's signed off on by 2 different federal agencies, and we get designation as a National Register district. Ridgway has 760 contributing properties. It is one of the 3 largest National Register districts in the state of Pennsylvania. When we completed and had the designation for the National Register District, we created a self-guided walking tour map and brochure. What happened was it was popular enough that we finally ran out of inventory at our visitor center and a couple other places in town where you could get these walking tour brochures. I began working on the update to that walking tour map. When we did the original map, the David Robertson home on Center Street was not included because it was not restored. A young couple that was here, Dave and Don Giardini, they were going through the process of restoring that home to its beautiful, beautiful opulence. It's 7,600 square feet. It is a huge home. So there are now 22 houses on the walking tour brochure. I also at the same time developed an interpretive walking map of the 12 interpretive signs I had developed several years ago, including the one that's in front of this house here, the Opie Grant House, to show people the various buildings and or homes that are either gone or are still here, so they have a better feel for if they walk along and they see these signs that I had installed in town, they get a feel for who the owner was, when it was built, and so on. The architecture of the homes is a big draw. We are adjacent to a wild and scenically designated river, being the Clarion River. We are less than a mile from the Allegheny National Forest, which is the only national forest in the state of Pennsylvania. If architecture and beautiful homes is not your thing, if you are an avid outdoor person like I am, this is a wonderful place to be, and Ridgway is the reception area for it.